There's something different about them. You felt it, maybe you couldn't name it. Maybe you just knew this person operates by a completely different set of rules. They're charming, yes, intelligent, absolutely, but there's a wall. And no matter how close you get, no matter how much time passes, you never quite reach the other side of it. What if I told you that wall wasn't built out of trauma? It wasn't built out of pain. It was built out of something far more ordinary. Something that happened in the quiet of a childhood bedroom. In a house with no siblings. In a mind that had no choice but to become its own entire world. Today we're going inside the psychology of the only child. And I promise you, by the time this video ends, you will never look at them the same way again. But before we begin, I need you to stay until the very end. Because the last thing I'm going to tell you, the final trait, it's the one nobody talks about. Not psychologists, not researchers. Not even the only children themselves, because most of them don't even know it exists inside them. It's the trait that ends relationships quietly, that pushes people away without a single argument. That makes someone feel completely alone while standing right next to the person who supposedly loves them. I'll get to it, but first, we need to build the foundation. Because nothing about this makes sense unless you understand where it all begins. Point 1, the fortress. Close your eyes for a second. Imagine being 6 years old. You come home from school, the house is quiet, there's no one to fight with, no one to play with, no one to run to. Just you, your thoughts, and 4 walls that have learned to keep you company. Most people hear that and feel sad, but here's what they don't understand, that child didn't feel sad for long. Because the human brain is extraordinary, it adapts, it survives. And what that child did, alone in that quiet room, was build something remarkable. They built an inner world so rich, so detailed, so completely self-sufficient, that eventually, the silence stopped feeling empty. It started feeling safe. Psychologists call it self-socialization. The child becomes their own companion, their own entertainer, their own emotional support. And it works, it works beautifully when you're 6. But here's where it gets dark. That brain never stopped. It kept building. Higher walls, stronger foundations, deeper rooms that no one else was ever given a key to. And by the time that child became an adult, they had created the perfect prison. One they didn't even know they were living in, one that looked from the outside like confidence. Like independence, like strength. It wasn't strength, it was armor. And the terrifying thing about armor is, it doesn't just keep danger out. It keeps everything out. Now I want you to hold that image, the fortress. Because every single thing we're about to discuss, every trait, every pattern, every hidden behavior, it all connects back to those 4 walls. Ready? Because this next one is going to hit different. Point 2, the curse of the spotlight. Here's something nobody prepares only children for. From the very first moment of their life, every eye in the room is on them. Every achievement noticed, every failure witnessed, every mood analyzed. There is no sibling to absorb some of that attention, no brother to take the blame. No sister to accidentally steal the focus. It is relentless, constant, total attention, and you'd think that would feel good. And sometimes it does. But here's what that kind of attention quietly does to a developing mind. It teaches the child that they are always being evaluated. Always being measured, that performance is not optional. That being ordinary is somehow a betrayal of all that attention being poured into them. So they push, they perfect, they achieve. Research from the Journal of Personality confirms what most of us already sense. Only children score significantly higher in conscientiousness and achievement motivation than children with siblings. They don't just want to succeed, they feel physically uncomfortable when they don't. But here's the part that breaks my heart a little. That perfectionism doesn't stay pointed outward, it turns inward, viciously. Only children become the harshest critics of themselves, replaying conversations from 3 years ago at 2 in the morning. Finding the one sentence they could have said better. The one moment they weren't quite enough. And in relationships, that same merciless standard gets quietly applied to everyone around them. Not cruelly, not consciously, but the bar is there, and most people eventually feel it. You don't meet it not because you're not enough, but because the bar was never meant for human beings. It was built by a child who was trying to justify all that attention. And they never stopped building it higher. Stay with me. Because what I'm about to tell you next, this is where the psychology of the only child stops being fascinating and starts being genuinely unsettling. This is where it touches something darker. Point 3, the quiet power. There's a type of control that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't make demands. It simply arranges. Quietly, carefully, almost invisibly, it arranges the world into a shape that feels manageable. Only children are masters of this, and it makes complete sense when you trace it back. Their childhood world was ordered. Their space was entirely their own. No one moved their things. No one disrupted their system. No one introduced unexpected chaos into their carefully maintained environment. The brain mapped this as truth. Order means safety. Unpredictability means danger. And that map never gets erased. It just gets buried under adulthood, under social skills, under the performance of being easygoing. But watch them closely. Watch how they arrange a dinner plan. Watch how they steer a conversation back to comfortable ground. Watch how they respond when something doesn't go the way they expected, not with anger, but with a very quiet, very deliberate recalibration. Like a chess player who just lost a piece and is already 3 moves ahead. Now here's where this touches dark psychology, and I want you to think about this carefully. Someone who controls their environment controls their comfort. But someone who learns to control information controls something far more powerful. They control perception. And only children, raised under the constant gaze of attentive parents, learned very early exactly what to show and exactly what to hide. They became fluent in impression management before they even had a word for it. One version of themselves for their parents, another for their friends, another for strangers, and somewhere underneath all of those versions, a self that almost no one has ever actually met. That's not manipulation, not exactly, but it lives very close to it. And the line between the two is thinner than most people are comfortable admitting. We're almost there, we're almost at the trait I promised you. But I need you to understand this next piece first, because without it, the last trait won't make sense. And once it does make sense, you're going to feel something shift inside you. I almost guarantee it. Point 4, the paradox of feeling. Only children are extraordinarily perceptive. Spend 5 minutes with one and you'll feel it. They see you. Not the version of you that you show the world, but something closer to the real thing. They notice the tension in your voice, the slight change in your expression, the thing you almost said but didn't. They read people the way other people read books, fluently, quickly, hungrily. And this feels like empathy. It looks like empathy, but here's what it actually is. It's observation, sophisticated, practiced, incredibly accurate observation. But observation from a distance. Only children grew up watching adults. They were often the only child in a room full of grown-ups, learning to decode emotional signals before they were old enough to produce them naturally. They became students of human emotion, experts at recognizing it in others, skilled at responding to it appropriately. But all of that learning happened from the outside looking in. There was no sibling to fight with and forgive before dinner. No one teaching them, through daily friction and daily repair, how to actually move through emotion in real time. So they learned to perform emotional intelligence without always having direct access to their own emotions. Psychologists have a name for this, alexithymia. A difficulty identifying and describing what you yourself are feeling, even when the feeling is clearly there. This is why only children can seem calm in moments that should devastate them. It's not strength, it's not coldness. They genuinely don't know yet what they're feeling. The emotion is happening, somewhere below the surface, in a language their conscious mind hasn't translated yet. The processing comes later, alone, in the quiet, long after the moment has passed and the damage has been done. And the people who love them are left wondering, did they even care? Did any of it matter? It mattered. God, it mattered. They just couldn't show you in time. Okay, here it is, the thing I've been building toward. The trait that operates silently, invisibly, beneath all the charm and intelligence and carefully managed perception. The trait that the only child themselves will probably deny, right up until the moment they recognize it in their own reflection. Point 5. The invisible wall. There will come a moment, in every significant relationship an only child has, where something happens. Something small, maybe, a misunderstanding, a disappointment. A moment where they needed something, and it wasn't there. And instead of saying anything, instead of asking or arguing or reaching out, they go quiet. Not cold exactly, just gone, present in body, absent in everything that matters. And something shifts, so subtly that you almost don't notice it at first. But the warmth is slightly less warm, the openness is slightly less open. And the distance that's appeared between you feels both impossible to measure and impossible to close. Because you don't even know when it arrived. You weren't given a chance to explain, you weren't invited to repair it. The trial happened without you, the verdict was reached without you. And by the time you realized there even was a trial, the sentence had already been quietly handed down. This is emotional self-sufficiency taken to its most painful extreme. And it is the deepest, most invisible wound in the psychology of the only child. They don't do it to punish you, I need you to understand that. They do it because every single time they were ever hurt as a child, the only available comfort was themselves. There was no sibling to cry to, no built-in witness to their pain. No one who automatically understood because they lived in the same house and breathed the same air. They learned at the most foundational level of their development that the only truly reliable response to pain was to go inward. To close the door, to handle it alone, and that mechanism saved them once. It was necessary once, but they never turned it off. And now it runs automatically, triggered not by danger, but by the faintest echo of vulnerability. By the terrifying possibility that they might need someone, and that someone might not come through. Better to never need anyone, better to build the wall before the hurt arrives. Better to be alone on your own terms than abandoned on someone else's. The tragedy is not that they are cold. The tragedy is that underneath all of that armor, underneath the self-sufficiency and the control and the carefully managed distance, there is someone who wanted connection more than almost anything. Someone who just never learned how to let it in without flinching. And they will spend years, sometimes an entire lifetime, wondering why the people they love keep feeling like they're on the other side of a wall. Never quite realizing they built it themselves, brick by brick. In the silence of a childhood that was beautiful in many ways, and lonely in ways that never fully healed. So here's what I want to leave you with. If you're an only child watching this, I don't want you to feel broken. Because you're not, everything your mind built, it built for a reason. The fortress kept you safe. The perfectionism pushed you further than most people go. The perception made you extraordinary at understanding a world that can be genuinely difficult to navigate. These are not flaws, they are adaptations, brilliant, creative, deeply human adaptations. But adaptations can be outgrown, walls can have doors added to them. And the most courageous thing an only child can do is not to tear down what they built, but to finally, slowly, let someone else inside it. And if you love an only child, be patient. Not because they deserve endless patience without accountability, but because the person behind that wall is worth knowing. And they are slowly, carefully, in their own time, trying to figure out how to let you in. That's the psychology of the only child. Complicated, fascinating, deeply human. If this video made you feel something, if you saw yourself or someone you love in these words, you know what to do. Subscribe, because next time we're going somewhere even deeper. I'll see you there.